Hello everyone, and hello Mr. Nurul. In this video I will present my presentation about friction. Before the presentation I will introduce myself. My name is Christian and my student ID number is 24032260450, and my experiment title is friction force. For presentation, first of the part presentation is classifying. Friction is a force that works due to the touch of two surfaces of an object. This force works in the opposite direction to the direction of motion of the object. Friction can occur due to contact between the surface of an object and the pad. So when object move, friction will form between them. An example of friction is when you push a table. If the surface of an object is raw, the friction force can be greater, and vice versa. So the value of the friction force on an object is influenced by the roughness or smoothness of the surface of another object. And for the second part is comparing. The comparing of difference between static and kinetic friction force. Static friction is a friction that occurs between the solid object which do not move relative to each other. Static friction occurs when an object slides down an inclined plane. Static friction formula. Static friction formed when the contact surfaces do not slide against each other. This means that each frictional force acts on an object that is given an external force with a symbol F, such as a pushing or pulling force of an object that initially at rest until it's about to move. The following is the kinetic friction force formula. Is a magnitude of kinetic force equal coefficient kinetic friction times normal force. And then for the next friction force is a kinetic or dynamic friction occurs when two objects move relative to each other and rub against each other. The coefficient of kinetic friction is generally denoted by magnitude of the coefficient of static friction, and is usually always smaller than the static friction force on the same material. The kinetic friction formula. Because kinetic friction works the contact surface slide against each other. In contrast to static friction, kinetic friction acts on moving object. And the following is the static friction force formula. Is a magnitude of static friction force equals coefficient static friction times normal force. And for a third part of presentation is the cause and effect. Factor that influence friction force and the impact of friction force. Friction is a force that works due to the touch of the surface of an object. This force works in the opposite direction due to the direction of motion of the object. Friction can occur due to contact between the surface of an object and the pad. So when object move, friction will form between them. Then the next effect of friction on an object is to reduce the object's speed. Friction force provides negative acceleration or deceleration, making an object's speed decrease. If the friction force continues, the speed of the moving object will continue to decrease until it runs out and the object stops moving, like that picture on the presentation. And for the last part is the for the fourth part is a hypothesizing. The magnitude of the friction force is directly proportional to the normal force between the two surfaces. That means that the greater the normal force or pressure pressing on the surface, the greater the frictional force then occurs between them. Like that, the picture on presentation page. And for the last part of presentation is definition. Friction is a force that is direct against the motion of an object or the direction the object tends to move. And for the formula is for formula friction the force is that on PPT. The definition is not the last part of presentation, and for the last part of presentation is example. Example of frictional force is the brakes on a motorbike case cause friction on the tires and the road surface.